Hey everybody, how y'all doing? Just thought I would kill some time today and show you a little bit of my Minecraft village I've been working on in between doing other projects and work. I'm starting out here in my usual house. This was the first house I built in this particular game. So it's pretty crude other than the fact that it's got huge stained glass windows and stuff. But this area has a number of just the basics: horses, cows, pumpkins, sheep, sugarcane, various foods, chickens, and all that. I have a couple of villagers living in here that I rescued from being zombies one day on a whim. Now they actually have stolen the beds in my house. I built them a second house to keep beds to hopefully distract them, but that didn't work. But let me get to the main event, which is my actual village. Now, this started as a part of a accessory for a Minecraft amusement park I was starting to build. And so I started out by saying, well, I was going to build this big Minecraft roller coaster, which you'll see a part of later. And then it evolved into making an entryway for my roller coaster in my amusement park. And then I'm like, I need Disney themed sort of entrance, like a Main Street USA entrance to the park. And the first thing I did was build myself this giant flashing light sign with Dr. Sky Skull Land prominently displayed. And that took me a while to get working. But that was a lot of fun. I also invented my own compressed font in order to be able to write words out like that. You'll see a few other examples later on. So into the village itself, I decided to use concrete to make all sorts of colorful buildings. And again, I sort of designed a lot of these buildings based on the sort of Walt Disney World Main Street USA entrance, that sort of early 20th century bright colored vibe. And I have a few little novelty things here: community swimming pool. When I first started, each of the buildings had just 2 workers assigned to it, but that quickly got out of control. So now each building usually has about 3 or 4 workstations in it, but I've kept the original signs. And I've tried in each building to put in carpeting and a little bit of decor along the way. So the weaponsmith has a picture of a sword, and it's in a frame. And the streets are polished andesite. The sidewalks are polished diorite. And like I said, you can see all the niceties. The center of the square is the village bell, where everybody assembles. And I did try and touch up every area. So the first librarian I had actually has some bookshelves to go with it. The first cartographer I had, and I name everybody once they reach master level, has his own map of the area. And I got to this main square and I started getting carried away with the decorations and the building designs. I'm especially proud of just this sort of archway. I think I took this style when I was looking at photos of buildings in Charleston. Though overall I went for a very minimalist style. I didn't try and make anything too fancy. I tried to make something cute with the least amount of space. But I did get a little elaborate at times. I've got a cathedral with a fountain in front of it. And the cathedral, I made a gold bell for the interior of it, and stained glass windows. Of course, you needed a cathedral for all the priests or the clerics in it. And this is what the interior looks like, which I think turned out pretty nicely. And you go out one of the side doors, and I put a little homage to a couple of the villagers that didn't make it in the early stages of creating this village. This village I built from scratch. I built it by basically rescuing zombie villagers, which took a ridiculous amount of time. And a few of them didn't make it. First farmer just sort of disappeared. I think he suffered the same fate as the second farmer. That is, he kept jumping off the stairs until he died. But I'm not sure, so I gave him a different sign for that. And I'm very fond of water features as well. I put a little Japanese Chinese style pagoda here. Obviously, again, not too fancy, but just enough to make things look interesting and give me another place for a priest. Out in the back, and this is going to get relocated at some point, is my entire condensed font in wood for Minecraft that I constructed. And I keep it there to remind myself of how I set everything up. You'll notice that there are a bunch of iron golems on leashes outside. I have a real iron golem problem. I have a lot of underground caves under this village, and those caves, even though I've tried to block them off, have been filled with monsters, and I think those monsters have been scaring the villagers and causing more and more iron golems to appear. So I've been slowly leashing them all up outside as a defensive zone. Now, here I made a little park, and this was another opportunity to just make something cute and minimalist, a little, gazebo and a nice giant oak tree and some other trees and flowers and flower beds. Now, when you get to this side of the village is when I started to get more creative with the buildings. I created this. This is going to be a building exclusively for a bunch of librarians, which turn out to be the most useful villagers you can make, so it's kind of a cult building. And because I made it out of purpur blocks, I decided to do a little joke and call it the Keepers of the Purpur Twilight, which is a reference to an old Outer Limits episode, which is something I'm old enough to understand. And as I got more experimental, I decided, hey, I'm going to make a giant mushroom house. It's still a relatively small house, but it matches a small-sized mushroom. And this one is a house just for me, because the villagers can't figure out how to get up into it. So it's a nice little escape and just a nice opportunity to play with other materials. And gives you a nice view of the building in progress, which I haven't finished yet, which is my my positive negative house, I should say. One side, they're sort of mirror images of each other. And let's drop back down there. And that originally started as just sort of a whim because I happened to look at my building supplies and realized I had this excess of white and black concrete. And then I was like, oh, it could be kind of fun to just make a house that one half is light, one half is dark, and they're kind of like photographic negatives of each other. This is still in progress, but will get done pretty soon. Now in the distance, which I'll save for another time, you can actually see the main part of my roller coaster that I've been building, and that was sort of the start of this whole thing. And you can also see running through the village, and that runs through the village in several locations, is my public transportation system, which basically is a powered minecart rail that takes me very long distances to distant villages. I don't go to those other villages as often anymore because I just don't need to. Now, outside here, this will be the next extension of the village. I decided to put one giant fountain with a giant jet in front, which may seem a little suggestive in shape, but I've decided to leave it the way it is. And you can also see two of the features for the roller coaster, the demon head with perpetual flame and the nostrils and horns, and a tower of fire and lightning that I built that the roller coaster goes around. And as a kind of an ironic joke, I decided to call the roller coaster the Creeper. And again, this was sort of the original motivation to make my font altogether. Now, the final bit that I'll show you today is I had to build one house for myself because the stinking villagers, if you have any bed they can access, they will take over your bed. So this is my own private house that I made. Nothing too fancy on the inside. I just made it look pleasant for myself. But I also then suddenly on a whim, I'm like, I need a place to store potions. So I made myself a big wine cellar where all my potions are kept in barrels. And on the flip side of that, I have my map in progress showing all the territory that I've explored so far. And, it's interesting that originally this village was just going to be kind of the entrance to an amusement park. Originally, I wasn't even going to have it populated. I was just going to have cute buildings. Then I'm like, well, I should have villagers and as employees. And then the whole village part sort of took over. And now it's kind of more a village than an amusement park, which is fine. But I get a kick out of it. And as you can see, I still have the amusement park vibe here because I have a come again sign at the very end. And that's where I'll leave it. Thanks for watching.